and welcome to another episode of How to Be a Great Player. Today we're looking at how to get the most out of your role-playing game, and it's going to come from areas that I think some of you might find quite surprising. So the first place that you can get the most out of your game is to engage with NPCs on a non-mission related subject. Now, as strange as that might sound, you should engage with NPCs that your GM has set up for you and say, hey, where do you come from? What do you do? What do you hope to achieve one day? How can I help you? Yes, we're going to go hunt the giant dragon in the background, but when we come back, is there anything that you want? Is there anything that you need? Now, you might think that this is a little bit strange. After all, the GM hasn't set up anything for this particular NPC to do or to have long-term stories, so why should you be asking them for information that has nothing to do with the story? Well, it's quite simple. You will get the most out of your game if you feel that you are in a real environment, if you're in a real world. Now, if you walk up to the blacksmith who's just sold you a piece of copper, iron, or breastplate or chest plate or whatever it is that you want to buy, and you start asking them more questions, all that you're doing is you're giving the GM an opportunity to add in more story. So suddenly he goes, well, they're talking to my blacksmith who really was just an NPC blacksmith who was there to give them some armor and send them on their way. But now they're asking more questions. So let me just quickly have the blacksmith suddenly have a daughter who's lame, and he'd love to work out how to cure her, but he doesn't have the funds to spend on the apothecary who lives just down the road. Boom, suddenly there's an apothecary that pops out of nowhere and is populating this village. So perhaps you go on the main mission, you come back, you say to the blacksmith, listen, if we find out how to get your daughter to walk again, would you make us a +1 sword? Would you repair our starship for free every time we came to the spaceport? Whatever the case might be. So by engaging NPCs in non-mission related discussions, you can start to find new stories and different stories that perhaps your GM hadn't planned. And sometimes these turn out to be really exciting and really interesting. Another way is to engage your fellow players' characters, but not on mission-related items. Again, hey, where are you from? How many times have you been adventuring with fellow players and their characters, and how many times have you stopped and actually asked one of their characters, hey, where are you from? What are you doing? What are your goals? What do you hope to achieve? What were your parents' names? Again, you might say, who cares? We did the whole character introduction thingy when we started playing, but what do I care about the character now? Now we're on the mission. Well, again, the more information you have about your fellow players' characters, the more invested you can be. And if you are starting to get your fellow players to start thinking about their characters going, oh, well, actually, I don't know what I want. Well, if you don't know what you want, then why are you here? Oh, because it's a mission? Well, think a little bit deeper. Do you want to get new clothes? Do you want to buy an estate? Do you want a title? Do you want to restore your family's honor? You can start to help tell the story of your fellow players' characters by just asking questions. It's really easy. What will happen is your fellow players will go, gosh, you're making my character better by just asking me some basic questions. You're making your experience better because you're getting a more vivid world that you are now playing in. And it's simply by saying, hey, what does your character want? Or I turn to your character and say, oi, what do you want to get out of your little existence? Me, personally, I want to own an horse. Once I've got an horse, I'll be absolutely fine. Perhaps it's as simple as that. Once he's got a horse, then what does he want to do? So engage your fellow players' characters in non-mission specific items and questions. The next step is to make notes. Make lots of notes. Far too often I see players literally just sitting and enjoying the game, but they're not writing down the names of NPCs they're coming across. They're not writing down clues that they've discovered. They're not writing down any information at all. And by the next session, which in most cases is a week later, all that information has simply vanished. So how can you then think that you're going to be in this wonderful immersive world? You simply can't be if you don't remember what was going on last week. Not everyone's privileged enough to be able to go and watch a video of what happened. So make notes, make lots of notes. Notes don't cost you anything. You can jot them down, you can look back at them, and go, hey, we met that blacksmith in that little village who had that girl who was lame. Let's go back there, because quite frankly, the idea of going onto a ship that's going to get attacked by a giant octopus, let's have a little break. Let's have an easier mission. Let's go and try and solve that one, because I already know so much about the blacksmith. Now you are starting to direct the story. Again, it makes it feel much more real if it's your story that you're exploring rather than the story the GM is throwing at you. A tip on how to get more out of your world, number 4 if you're keeping count, which I usually don't, so, is include the other players' characters as often as you can. Now, we spoke about phobias last week where you're telling people, hey, come with me. But there's nothing stopping you from saying, all right, look, I want to get a horse. Wouldn't you come with me to the stables because I want to get a good price and I know you're quite a good negotiator? Or wouldn't you come with me to the stables because I have a fear of cats and I know that there's a cat in the stable? Whatever the case might be, if you're in that dreaded market moment where everyone splits off to go shopping, don't split off. Tag along with someone else's character and engage with them saying, well, I'm going to come with you, but I'd really like to go to the stables a little bit later. Can we go there when we're done here? And if you don't get to the stables in that shopping experience because the GM has decided to interrupt you with an attack by aliens, then come back to it. Make a note. Wanted to buy a horse, didn't get one. So that you can play later on when you do get a horse. Oh, finally, remember we were in the market, we didn't get that horse. Now I've got a horse. That's fantastic. So make notes, but use other players' characters as often as you can. Even if you've got the skill, rather give it to somebody else to make that roll. So what if you roll and you succeed? That's just your own personal ability to randomly roll a random generator to get some random numbers which will randomly determine whether you succeed or not. If you manage to get somebody else involved and they succeed, well, now you've formed a team, haven't you? So that's a much, much better way of telling a story. Well, in my opinion anyway. Number 5, explore off-topic stuff like personal or family history of yourself. So you've spoken to other PCs about it, about their stuff. Explore your own stuff as well and say, hey, listen guys, I was raised by monks and I'd really like to go back to that monastery simply because I want to tell a good story, and I think that monastery could be a place where we could have some fun. Obviously, from your character's perspective, you want to go back to the monastery because that venerable old monk that used to teach you as a young lad is probably getting on in years and you want to get back before he dies of old age. That's quite a heartwarming story, and that will build the imagination of your fellow players into looking for this old monk before he dies. As your GM, he should be going ballistic and having this wonderful time of inventing all sorts of atrocities that's happened to the monastery and to the monk itself. So by the time you get there, the monk, of course, has been abducted by aliens and is now currently 1,000,000 miles away. Enter a new adventure. But do you see how by your one little decision of I want to go back to my roots, back to my history, you've now created this huge storyline. You've created the storyline, not the GM. He's now just following your lead, adding in new stuff, bringing in new stuff. Well, isn't that such a better experience than being told, there's a mission, you need to go on the mission, you need to go to point A, point B, point C. It's so much better if you're the one who's coming up with those stories so that your GM can build on them and make them better. But he can't do it if you're not offering it to him. Add to your bio as you're going along. Item number 6, add to your bio. So what if you've written down the answers to those 6 questions plus one bonus one that we spoke about a couple of weeks ago? You've fleshed out your character, you've got your character type, you've got all of this wonderful stuff. It's not a static document. It's not also cast in stone. So you might talk about, well, I was raised in South America and my mother's run off to South Africa. Well, perhaps whilst you're sitting thinking about things, she's run off to South Africa with someone from the USA. So she's a little bit more aggressive towards people from the USA, or whatever the case might be. You can add to your bio. If your character is 25, you've got 25 years worth of history that you can slot in and use later for that personal stuff that you're going to be engaging with other players' characters in. So add to your bio, keep it evolving. It'll be interesting for you to kind of see what you can link together, as well as for the GM to see what you're adding in and build on that. Then finally, discuss with your GM. Sit down and say, look, my character was born whilst exploring Aztec ruins. let me go back to those ruins. I'd love to see it. Or can we bring in something along those lines? Engage your GM. Help him tell better stories. Help her explore your backstory by reminding them, saying, hey, remember, I've got this backstory. You don't want to be a pest and constantly running to the GM saying, hey, me. You could also go to the GM and say, hey, listen, so-and-so's got a really interesting backstory, which I discovered whilst talking to them in character. Can we explore that in the next session or in the next adventure? Trust me, your GM will appreciate you going and saying, these are some adventures that I'm really interested in exploring. It might help the GM come up with some great ideas, and it'll certainly make the campaign feel just that much better. I hope this has helped in some way to bring your game a little bit more alive and to help you get much more out of your sessions. And if it did, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share us with your friends. We seem to have good advice. I certainly seem to be getting a lot of feedback saying the same thing. Until next time, happy playing.